A very pleasant good day to all of our viewers and friends. We are delighted that you have joined us for another edition of Marriage Encounter. We are today wrapping up a very important discussion on conflicts. We have been talking about conflicts for a while now. And while I say we are wrapping up a discussion on conflicts, perhaps wrapping up is not the right word because maybe next week we will make further reference to conflict. Conflict is such a real thing. Conflict is such a useful thing. Some of our viewers may not quite understand what I mean by that, but it is such a useful thing in marriage that it is worth spending a lot of time on. With me today, Dr. Greene, is Pastor Staton Adams, and we are going to be guiding you through this very meaningful discussion. Dr. Adams, good day and welcome to Marriage Encounter.
Yeah, good day, Dr. Greene. Good day again to all our viewers. It is always a joy and delight to be on Marriage Encounter, to share with our viewing, listening audiences the vital information that will help to strengthen the marriage alliance. As I would normally say, you have to save the marriage in order to save the family. And what we're talking about here are critical things that will improve and save the marriage so that the family eventually is being saved at the same time.
Certainly. We would like to invite our viewers and listeners to just pause a moment to have a word of prayer with us. Eternal Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity and privilege to share with those our friends in Radio Lands. We ask that as we go into today's broadcast, that you will guide our thoughts and grant that the information shared will prove meaningful, useful to some listener out there who may be having an issue and may also strengthen other relationships, oh God. Take full control and have your own way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
We ended last week by talking about the importance of working together as a team, strengthening one another, listening to one another, taking encouragement from one another. And I want to begin there, Pastor Adams. But before we do, we want to take some time just to remind our viewers, our listeners in Antigua, that we have a very special intimacy seminar planned for them, married couples. We want you to be a part of this. Pastor Adams, you may want to talk about this. This really comes under your auspices.
Yes, definitely. The intimacy seminar is a special seminar directed to improving the intimacy among the married and to give information to those who are committed to a steady relationship and on their way to be married. So we also open the seminar to those who are maybe engaged to be married, that you can benefit in advance from this experience. But it is a tremendous seminar that deals with all of the areas. We look at the foundation, the biblical foundation of intimacy, and then we deal with the intimacy improving behaviors and factors. We deal with the intimacy decreasing issues and problem factors, and we give the couple both the practical and the academic information about how all of this happens. And it's a setting is not a church environment. We are apart as couples in a particular environment that is controlled, and we are discussing and interacting in that space. The whole weekend we deal specifically with intimacy only. That's our focus.
Now this is an event that you have to register for. There's a registration.
Yes, sure. The couples have to register in advance, and we don't want you to wait until the last moment. We want you to register pretty early. Once we announce the date and the venue by the next, we just want you to register early on time, because we have to be sure that our space is manageable and our participants are manageable. And we want to be sure that while we are sharing and having all of this excitement and fun, it is in a comfortable atmosphere. So it is very important that you register and register early. You know, we've had a beautiful one here in St. Kitts, but some people came in late on us with registration and we had to close it off. In fact, Dr. We would have had more than 45 couples. So we had about 90 plus people in that space, and we would have had more. But we had to close the registration. So don't wait until late. Register early through your family life department, through your family ministries leader of your church. And as soon as we announce the direct venue and all of that, get yourself registered and let's prepare for this exciting event.
Now, there are two other things I want to say on this, because quite a number of you who are listening are not members of the Seventh Adventist Church. Now, from time to time, the Seventh Adventist Church has what we call family enrichment seminars. We do a lot of church activities. This is not a church activity. This is open to the public. I like the idea of the registration. It's going to cost you a little bit, but it is an investment in your relationship. We want to take you to a place with air conditioned comfort. We're going to have lunch. It's going to be all day.
Yes.
It is, I think the date, if I'm not mistaken, Pastor Adams, the Friday evening is,
yes,
pull up my calendar here.
The 30th, 31st
of August. Is it?
Yeah, the 30th to the 31st.
And all day from 9 to whenever, on Saturday, the 31st. So it's a weekend event. We want you to plan for that. Those of you who have to make arrangements to get time off from work, this is an investment for you and your spouse. Now, if you are having issues with your relationship, if you just want, you're not having any serious issues, but you just want to strengthen your marriage and give attention to intimacy, the whole understanding of what intimacy is, we're going to be exploring all of that. So if you are not a member of the Seventh Adventist Church, those of you who are Seventh Adventists, you can register through your family life director with the information, but you can call the South Leeward Conference office. The number is 462-6067. I had to pause on that number. I haven't called that number for a while.
Yes.
So you can call that number 462-6067, South Leeward Conference, and ask for the Family Life Department and get the information, how you can get your registration form, how you can pay the registration. Remember, we will be on Friday evening from about 7 to 9 or thereabout, and then from 9 a.m. or thereabout on Saturday morning, and we're going to go all the way down to about 5 o'clock, I believe, Pastor Adam.
Yes.
And that includes lunch and a very special renewal of vows ceremony at the end.
Yes,
you
renewal
want
of vows.
to be a part of this. You are free to register. And the other thing, my final thing before we get into this program, because time is running away, I like the idea. I started saying I like the idea of the registration, because a lot of times when we do things for all and sundry and people just come, they don't take it seriously. We are committed to providing quality information. You have listened to us on Marriage Encounter. You know the kinds of information we share. We only have half an hour, but then we're going to have a lot more time when we can go into a lot more details with practical aspects.
Sure.
And so it's an investment, and you know that those who are there are those who will take their marriage seriously enough to pay for that event. So just want to say that you are free to be a part of this event, but register, because in another 2 or so weeks, we may be closing the registration, because, you know, we have limited space, and we want to keep that in mind. All right. Well, having said that, you know, I'm excited about that, Pastor Adams, because I remember the St. Kitts experience, you know.
Yes.
And that was very meaningful. But we have to deal with what we have to deal with today. We're talking about conflicts. We want to look at the whole matter of when there are known problems in the relationship. Last week, we indicated that when your spouse points out something to you, you must not be defensive. You must accept the feedback. And you started making this point, Pastor Adam. So I'll just ask you to expand on it, because you kind of referenced it only last week. But it is to say that we must seek feedback from others as well. So imagine your spouse tells you this is an issue. I mean, you may have an accountability partner. You can go to your accountability partner and say, hey, give me an honest opinion here. Do you find so is the case? And they can tell you. So can you just expand on that a little bit? You know,
Oh, yes.
getting counsel from others likewise.
Yes, and that is helpful, and particularly I was going to end by saying that you have an accountability partner. The person points out the exact same thing that your spouse is pointing out to you. You are more inclined to listen to that person and not to your spouse. But it's the very same thing your spouse has pointed out to you. So there it is that you can. So if you're not so sure, is this person getting at me? Did they have some motive or something? But if your accountability partner tells you the same thing, then you know for sure that your spouse have your interests at heart because they have pointed out to you before. You mean, and they don't have any sinister motive or anything like that. You see, but all well and good, because I said the principle applies not only in the context of marriage, but in our social realm as we interact. You know, we have close buddies, you know, and that is what, you know, we should have somebody who is equal to us that can talk to us straight. As I say that a person should have 3 persons in their life, you know, an accountability person who could talk to you straight, an older person you can learn from, and a younger person who you can pass on things to, right? So yes, and that is so very, very crucial that if your close friend could point that thing out to you because they have your best interest at heart, and your wife, who is your best friend, or your husband is your best friend, point out that very same thing, as they say, why do you take offense or feel anywhere, you know, put down? No, just know that you should be happy for the fact that you have more than one, that there's somebody who's concurring with what your spouse have said. And therefore, it makes it all the more obvious to you that you would need to see how is it that you need to treat with the issue or the problem.
Certainly. And again, remember, your spouse is on your side. And we want you to bear that in mind. Your spouse is on your side. Your spouse has your interest at heart, and your spouse wants good for you and good for the relationship. Because if you are both happy, if you're both content, then you're going to have a better marriage, a more meaningful relationship. So please, and because we're talking about problems, you know, if I'm in school and I have a challenge with a particular subject area, what I do is I practice. I remember when I was doing mathematics at advanced level, I used to practice whenever there was an issue. I had a mathematics teacher who was very, very good. She used to give us the problem, Pastor, and then give us the answer. She said, go home and work it. If you see the answer is there, if you don't get that, you know it's wrong. And you know, I would practice that thing, man, and until I get an understanding of how I arrive at the right answer. The process is important. Here's the point. The point I'm making is this, that you realize that, hey, this is giving me a little challenge here. If I don't perfect this, when it's examination time, I might fail. So as much help as I can get with this, I'm going to take it. So I am very happy when my professor calls me and says, listen, I noticed you made a mistake here. I'm seeing a pattern. Every time you get to such and such a junction, you take the wrong turn. I'm pointing that out to you so that you can work on it. And I'm interested in that because I want to correct that so that it doesn't happen again. That's the attitude I must have in my marriage, with my relationship. I must say to my spouse, hey, listen, you have a perspective that I don't have. And let me say a word on this. This is very important. The perspective of the other person. You know, if we look at ourselves all the time, we are going to have a limited perspective. I remember reading, I believe, the introduction to one of John Gray's, or was it H. Norman Wright? One of John Gray's books, I think it was. Now, he's one of these 2 authors, and I can't remember which one, but I was reading the introduction to one of the books, and he pointed out that he went to his father's funeral. His father was kidnapped and locked in the trunk of a vehicle, and he suffocated. and died in the trunk of the vehicle. Now, here's the interesting thing. He said when he went to the funeral, he asked his brother to accompany him to the scene. And the car was there, and he said he climbed in the trunk of the vehicle and said to his brother, when I hit on the car, open up. I just want to get a sense of what my father went through before he died. And so he climbed in the trunk, the brother closed the trunk, and when he hit the trunk, said, I'm in here long enough, let me out. The brother said, hey, listen, the tail light is out. See if you can push your hand through the tail light and unlatch the trunk. And with the guide of his brother, he was able to push his hand through the knocked out taillight and reach out and open the trunk. And here's the point he was making. He said, listen, his father could have escaped because the car had a missing taillight. With a hole that the father could have pushed his hand out, unlatched. But from where the father was, he couldn't see. It took somebody outside with a different perspective to be able to see and to direct the person on the inside to do that. Sometimes you need that outside look. Sometimes you need to step back from yourself and say to your spouse, hey, listen, you're looking on. I may miss this perspective. I don't have the angle that you have. So from your angle, from your perspective, what are you seeing? Be open and tell me what you're seeing. What is the wrong move that I'm making so that I can improve, that I don't make this mistake again. We ought to be able to have that attitude and appreciate it when it comes.
Yes, and you remember that was exactly the illustration that we made at the seminar when we had the couple blindfolded at the one end and had the other one listen.
Oh yes, I didn't even remember that.
Of course, yeah, that's the exact thing, because you're not seeing, but the other person on the other side is seeing, and you have to trust them with the instruction and the guidance that they're giving you, where to move. You're doing this wrong, no, step back, change that thing, and you had to guide the person, and they had to trust the other person who was seeing where they weren't seeing, and that's it. And then I think, I thought about it when we finished the last program the last time. It came to my mind. There are some intimacy decreasing behaviors, and there's some intimacy improving behaviors, and some of them are environmental, and some of them are personal. These things that we're talking to here over our last 3, 4, 5 broadcasts are personal factors, because they are the end product, or the bigger picture is that, and sometimes we're not even aware of that. When we are not doing these things, when we are not prepared to have these things done, to have these processes go on, what we're actually doing, it is actually intimacy decreasing behavior. But when we are open and we are listening and we are guided and we want our spouse to point out, and we are doing the dynamics that we are talking about here, these are intimacy increasing personal factors. And you can't go wrong, because it's going to redound to the overall intimacy and the growth of, because we're saying that intimacy is a process. It's not something that you arrive at. And all of this is helping you to grow in this area and to improve your overall relationship. And that's what we want, the general intimacy, the general oneness of the relationship.
Pastor Adams, I want to expand on that a little bit, because the longer you are married, the more connected you ought to be.
Yes.
Unfortunately, for some people, the longer they are married, the greater the gap between the two of them. But if you picture a triangle, they say has 3 sides, but it also has 3 points. And if you and your spouse are on the if you take an equilateral triangle, and you and your spouse are at opposite ends, and you're moving towards the common point, that's when you get to that common point where you are totally one on that point, that's the point of intimacy. So every day you move closer to one another. And when just now Pastor Adams spoke about intimacy enhancing activities. The idea is those things that bring you together, those things that point, that draw you closer to one another, are those things that you want to be able to practice so that you can enhance your relationship. That's very important. And you ought to consider that very seriously. So the longer you are in the relationship, the closer you ought to be joined towards one another, to the point where you become one. And
Yeah.
again, we talk about the transparency element, the openness, where you feel comfortable with allowing the other person to peep into your inner being, your soul. Well, we will talk more about those kinds of things during the seminar.
Yeah. And you know, Dr. Greene, after the seminar, I was on the radio because probably word got out and people wanted to know, let me come to talk to this matter. And one of the interviewers asked me personally, well, how do I know that we are growing in intimacy, and is there something for us to measure, you know, and in terms of time frame? And I said to them, yes. You have the marriage and family life cycle, and you use that to measure. After 3 years, are we closer to each other than we were when we started here? Well, after 6 years, are we closer? After 9 years, are we closer? And we're saying that by 9 years, you should be close to, if not arrive at the place of perfect synergy, where you are really merged into one, and you are on your way, and so you can use that to know whether you are actually growing, because that's it. Marriage is it, if we are not growing together, we are naturally growing apart, because we are sinners and sin separates, right? So if we're not growing together, we are growing apart, and sometimes the marriage is growing apart and we're not even aware that is what is happening, because of the stage we are in marriage. We might be doing things that married people do, that in the busy summer stage of marriage. We are going out our career, we are parenting our children, we are building our home, we are doing several things, right? But while all of that is happening, something is going wrong with the intimacy, and we're not even aware.
Let me say this, Pastor, because that point you're making there is very important. Last week you quoted, I believe it was John Gottman.
Yes.
And when you spoke about, I think it was the matter you were dealing with something with denial.
Yes.
Now here is the thing that I want to point out here. Gottman spoke about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, some behavior patterns,
yes,
that certainly mean death for the relationship, you know?
Yes.
And another author by the name of what's his name there? How did I forget his name there? But he spoke about signs of a marriage in distress. As you spoke to the issue, Brian Craig spoke about signs of a marriage in distress. So I just wanted to add that there are some things we can share with individuals that can be markers, identifiers, that you can look and see if this is happening, if this is happening, this is happening. These are indicators that the marriage is in distress. I do a presentation, I call it the hypertensive marriage. You know, so I talk about, you know, just like you could check your blood pressure and know your figure, know that you're hypertensive. There is an instrument that you can use to check the temperature of your marriage and to determine whether or not your marriage has a fever, whether or not your marriage is hypertensive, and how you're going. So yes, certainly, we do know that we can use these things. We're going to share some of them in the seminar, hopefully. Now it's one seminar, so we can't do everything, but
well, as much as we can do. Yes.
So again, it's important to be mindful. I think all of this says, Pastor, that we can't just live and not give attention to what is happening in our marriage. We must be intentional about grooming the relationship. It's like a plant. We like to use the illustration of a plant where you have to water the plant, you have to tend the plant, you have to prune the plant every now and then if you want to get maximum footage from the plant. And it's the same thing for the relationship. You must not ignore your relationship. There must not be a time in your marriage where the marriage itself is not a priority.
Yeah, and I'm glad what you said, because the illustration that you used there, I have another presentation of the 7 factors to show that the marriage is on its way, is downhill. But I like what you said there, because when you go to a clinician and they look at you, because you said you name it, there's something about the pressure, something pressure about the marriage. They look at the pattern to see, like every month they test you over a period of time to see what is the pattern. And if that pattern persists, they will tell you, well, look, you are on your way to having suffer a serious stroke or a massive heart attack or something, and they give you some corrective something immediately. They'll want to have you for observation. They'll want to give you medication. They do something. They just don't, because they want to know. They're sure. And more than that, they want to find out why you have this elevated blood pressure, what is causing it. The same principle applies, right? And therefore, and I like that principle, because it goes right to the fact where you need to allow your spouse to show you each time this behavior or this pattern has occurred or is occurring. They need to show you, because if the pattern is persistent and is occurring, then what is causing it? You know, and how do we fix that at the point that is causing this? Why is this pattern reoccurring? You know, we need to have a conversation in this particular area. Why is this pattern reoccurring? It is not something new now that you're going to give the person, okay, this is just what I'm going to give you some grace so that you can, you know, see how you can deal with this. But if it's something that is a pattern that is reoccurring, that is something that will require attention all the time. You know, in the clinical setting, when we are dealing with people with the emotional, psychological issue, that is what clinicians look for. Even during the time of assessment, you're assessing a client, you want to see if there are certain patterns and what has caused those patterns to develop or to persist, you see. And so this is so very important. And I like that point that you made there, using the temperature thermometer testing principle that you introduced there just now.
Now, I just want to say, because we are wrapping up now, that your marriage, the success rather of your marriage, is your business. You know, you must want your marriage more than anybody else. Because if you don't want it, you know, there's not much that somebody else is going to be able to do about it. You must want your marriage. You must invest in the, you know, Pastor, when there's a good marriage, when you are, after a long, stressful day, and you can go home to your spouse, you know, it's so refreshing. And that's what we want to be able to share with our listeners today. You know, now for some people, they may be saying, boy, going home, that is stress. Well, that's what we want to change. If that's your situation, you need to come to the seminar. Because we want to change that to make it a situation where you look forward
going
to
home,
connecting with your spouse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
that is and it's a good point to leave, because that was the point where we ended the program on the radio. Because that is what it is. The home is a place where we go home and we can be our real selves, because we're not going to feel judged or put down or in any sort of contempt or anything towards us. We can be real, because we are knowing that those who are around us in that setting, in that space, we are so intimate, we are so close to each other. And this is not just the husband and wife alone, but the entire family, because we are just talking to family wellness. But family wellness depends on the wellness of the intimacy, the relationship between those two people who form part of the system, the top of the system, that is the husband and the wife. That's a system, because if the head is sick, then the whole system will be sick.
Well, that's where we end for today. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. Until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.